Talk Money to Me is a financial podcast produced by TransGlobal. All opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of TransGlobal. This podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be relied upon as basis for investment decisions.
Hey everybody, welcome to Talk Money to Me, where we talk about money and how it affects you. I'm your co-host, Jonathan, and I know a little bit about finance.
And I'm your other co-host, Tracy, and I know almost nothing about finance.
We have two wonderful guests with us today. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name's Walt. I'm in financial services.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on again. This is Richard Wang, and I have around 10 years of experience in life insurance.
I know in season 1 we talked about life insurance and got into a few more details about that. But there are other types of insurance, and we wanted to explore those other types today. I was wondering if you guys would be able to give our audience a little bit of an understanding of the origins of where insurance as a concept came from.
Insurance, this concept has been around for a very long time. This concept comes from maybe the 3rd or 2nd millennium, used by Babylonians, Chinese, Indians. The most common way of transporting goods was on boats. And if you did it where you're going through some rough water and you lose a boat, that's a big deal. I mean, think about if we lose things now versus back then, right? We're talking about wooden boats with people rowing them. So there had to be a way, and I'm going to keep saying this, a way of assigning risk individually, like separating the risk, right? We're not all taking one risk as merchants. We're somehow, they found out a way to diversify their risk amongst themselves. And it didn't really become a really popular idea until maybe 1600s in England, where they also started to apply the same ideas that these old civilizations have been doing, and eventually which has evolved into what we have today.
In the life insurance industry, we always hear about the story about people who work in the mining industry, like back in the days where, it's a very dangerous job. And a lot of times, they would put money together, into one, maybe like a plate where when they go to the job, it was in case somebody falls or gets hurt or somehow dies, and then the money can be paid for the families, for the remainder of the family.
So I'm curious to ask, I was wondering, are there any types of insurance that are required by law that you have to have, or is everything just optional?
So I want to say in my experience, I want to say the most common required by law that comes off the top of my head would be car insurance.
What is it specifically about auto insurance that makes it a mandated insurance to have?
I think one thing that comes to mind is that statistically speaking, you get injured or die from auto-related incidents more than you die, if through a medical condition. I think the risk involving driving is a lot higher.
I can be the world's safest driver, but if someone plows into me, that's not my fault, right?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense as just a general overarching concept of car insurance is mandatory because it doesn't just impact you. Right. Yeah. It doesn't just affect you.
Right.
It, in general, always affects someone else. And so if you don't have it, it sucks for the other person most of the time.
And we're not even just talking about cars or people. A tree. If you hit a tree that's damaged to city property, you hit a rail guard, they're going to charge you money for that, right? Because you damaged
that's right, yeah.
A town municipal property. And so insurance will cover that as well. So I don't want our listeners to think it's only a person-to-person kind of or vehicle-to-vehicle. And I also want to mention probably house insurance, right? When we think about fire or floods or, to be honest, that's all I can really think of. I just remember fire taking up the majority of claims of why house insurance is needed.
I think insurance really is an overarching concept of how can you protect yourself from huge losses while benefiting companies who offer this protection? It's supposed to be a mutually beneficial agreement, but I assume that there are some companies that are just trying to get your money. Because I think when I get frustrated with thinking about all the millions kinds of insurance I could buy, I always end up with is it just all a scam? Are there some guiding principles that you guys have to approach any kind of insurance?
It's just a scam. I want to say, in America, if we compare ourselves to the rest of the world, we are probably the most heavily regulated when it comes to insurance, right? I believe the misconception in the United States is insurance carriers are not going to pay us. Even in America, I understand there are going to be instances where it feels like, hey, I should get paid for this kind of loss. But we have to remember any kind of insurance that you sign up with, it's a contract between you and the company, or what we call the carrier, right? Different carriers have different benefits. Geico, Farmers Insurance, Nationwide, I believe, also has some forms of insurance. But I would really stress for you guys to read what you guys are signing up for, because that is what they get you. And I know no one wants to read the terms of service, let's be honest. I think they did a report once where if you read the entire Apple terms of insurance, it would take you like 9 hours, right? But hey, this is something that you're getting insurance for, something that you want protection for.
I just got a letter in the mail saying, do you want to switch to auto insurance because you drive very little? That increases by mileage, right? Which I think is an extremely cool idea, because I drive so little now that, like, if my car insurance can go down to like a flat rate of like a really, really low amount, and then they just charge me per mile that I drive, right?
I got that in the mail too. Yeah.
Really good for me, but not good for someone who drives to somewhere far away for work, right? So just like, what are some like things to consider for each type of insurance?
I mean, in my example, I mean, in all of the accidents that I've ever gone into have only been in the East Coast, and it's only been someone hitting me. It doesn't make sense for me to get a really large policy. If anything, my auto insurance is more like, it covers me if the other person doesn't have insurance. That's what I'm more worried about. That's because I'm so confident that I will never cause an accident, right? Because I feel like I'm in total control behind the vehicle. I don't text. I drive like, well, what do they say? A grandma? Is that it? I have 2 hands on the wheel. I'm super close to the steer. Like, I am super safe with it. I just want to emphasize that it's going to be depending on, and you have to be real with yourself, right? If you feel like, hey, I'm not that good of a driver, I have gotten a couple accidents or whatever, then maybe you would want to increase your coverage. Just like what Walt was saying, like, hey, maybe if your health isn't as good, maybe you should increase the benefits that you want to get out of your health insurance by paying a little bit more money.
When it comes to auto insurance specifically, sometimes if you have been out having a good time with your friends and they're not sober enough to drive, you offer to drive for them. But let's say, unfortunately, you get into an accident. So is the auto insurance linked to you as the driver, or is it linked more to just whoever's car is in the accident at that time?
That is an awesome question, because everyone asks that question, and it's going to be linked with the car. So it's not so much whoever's driving behind it. Think of the car as a separate entity. It has its own, quote unquote, its own health insurance, so to say. So let's say if you were driving your friend's car and you do get into a minor accident, it will be based off of whatever coverage that car has. So I don't believe you're able to get more than one car policy. I believe it's just one. You have one primary car insurance, and that is used to just cover your car. So it's not covering whoever is behind the wheel. It's just covering that particular car. So your parents can take your car out and have no problem. Your friends and family, whomever. As long as the car has proof of insurance, it just means that that particular vehicle is covered.
That seems like, sorry, I don't know if that cut off, but that seems like it would be really hard for the insurance company to assess risk.
To a degree.
Are you required to list out everyone who would drive the car?
No, not everyone that drives the car. It's more based on age, right? So let's say an 18-year-old, doesn't matter, female, male.
But that's what I'm saying. What if my parents insure the car under their name, and then me, the 16-year-old, just got my permit driver, comes in, and I want to drive the car? You were saying earlier that it's just that the car is insured.
If you're a primary driver, then you would have to be listed, meaning that I use this car all the time, right? Not like a one-time instance where, you and your buddies got drunk a little bit and you have to drive this car one time. If you would have to,
we just found a loophole.
maybe. But I want to say it's going to be based off of whoever the main driver is. So your parents could be the primary insured, but for example, there's other people that can be listed under that car as well. It's just you want to protect whoever is going to be driving that particular vehicle the most.
I think I'm just confused, because how can they prove who's the primary driver? I'm not trying to advocate illegal activity, PSA. I am just saying, because someone who's a brand new driver, their premium is going to be higher, right? So, yes. Of course, my parents what my parents did was get car insurance, and then don't drive for a whole year so that you have a great record. So that was their philosophy, right? Just like,
that's kind of smart.
My philosophy is if I don't drive for a whole year, I'm going to forget how to drive. Then I won't gain the experience that I supposedly have gained over the whole year. So those are two different schools of thought. But what I'm trying to consider is be under my parents as primary drivers and then drive the car when I need to primarily. And how does the insurance, like if I get into a car accident, not listed as a primary driver, how does the insurance company deal with that?
Let me put it this way. Most insurance carriers are multi-billion-dollar companies, right? They'll find out. And they'll find out. In my experience, even with life insurance, I've had insurance carriers come up to me and say, hey, we found out your client smokes from a third party, quote unquote.
What?
Is this true? Multiple times. And I have to sit there with the client like, hey, do you really smoke? Like, the insurance carrier either gave your wife a call, gave your friends a call, looked on your Facebook, they can find out. Again, multi-billion-dollar companies, they have the resource.
Big data.
I didn't know they do that. So they
definitely.
They're very thorough.
Big data.
Very, very thorough. Yeah.
Gotta take down all those Facebook photos.
You gotta be super careful. And that's why I'm saying, like, you're not the first person to think that. You won't be the last. But we have to believe that the insurance carriers already have fail-safe guards in that example, right?
Interesting.
I just want to stress that we shouldn't be afraid of insurance, right? This is something that's supposed to help us out. I know there have been stories in the past where insurance carriers have not paid out, but in those examples, it's because of the person who bought the insurance. Hey, you did not read the fine print, or you lost out on a technicality because you didn't realize. And is it a crappy situation to be in? Definitely. But we as consumers, we have to take our own responsibility and what we are trying to insure and what we're trying to take care of. We can't completely just put it on an agent and just have the agent take care of everything. And if that's their job, yes, it is. But let's be honest, there could be bad agents out there selling you bunk policies. So you yourself as a consumer want to be a little bit knowledgeable enough to understand what you need and how to get covered for it.
Is it wise to seek out or to buy insurance from people that you know?
I think that's a very hard question. In my example with my friends and my group of friends, I try not to sell them anything. The way I work about it is I just want you to know. I don't care if you buy from me, but this is something as we get older in our stages of life, we buy more houses, buy more whatever. You need to be more educated. There's no excuse for you not to be. And if you want to buy a policy from me, by all means. If you want to buy it from someone else, by all means, just buy it. Get it. Be insured. Be safe. I don't want to find out on Facebook or Twitter your house burned down and you have no house insurance or no fire insurance, right? Or some devastating, like, I don't want to see that happen to my friends. So the role that I play is more about, I'm here to educate you. And if you think that education that I'm giving you is worthy for you to buy a policy off of me, then I will do my best. So I don't want to say just because you know someone as a friend that they're not going to try to take advantage of you, because that's
so what you're saying is that you're a good friend.
Just because there are instances where just because your friend is in insurance, they might be a part of a company that might not give you what you would need, or their own library of companies that they work with. It might not just be suitable for you. So then you would have to go and maybe find someone else to help you out.
And you would be honest with your friends about that. So again, we're back to you're a good friend.
Yeah,
so
basically.
That's the conclusion of this podcast is Richard's a good friend.
All right. Now, Walt, are you a good friend?
Yeah.
I saw that hesitance.
Well, I think just to echo a little bit of what Richard was saying, I think when it comes to life insurance, really that is the best way to kind of go about it. But I mean, what I mean by that is that you do need to seek out professional advice. You do need to understand, what you're trying, because a lot of times when you are buying life insurance, especially for permanent life insurance, that's going to be a lot of money. That's a lot of premium that's going to go into the policy. So you do want to find someone who's able to explain the product well to you, someone who has your financial needs for their best interest, not for themselves, and kind of go from there. But if you're simply just wanting to compare quotes when it comes to auto insurance, then I think your approach could be a little different.
All right. And with that, we'll go ahead and draw our conversation to a close. Thanks again to our wonderful speakers for giving a little bit more insight. We'll catch you at the next one. Bye.